I never thought being a security guard would turn into a story I'd be afraid to tell. To most people, it sounds like the most boring job in the world. Sitting behind monitors, doing slow patrols through empty corridors, maybe catching a kid trying to sneak in. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous. That's what I thought too, when I signed up for night shifts at a half-abandoned office complex outside of town. The building itself was huge. 9 floors, once full of corporate life. But now, most companies had left. Only 2 floors were still rented out by a law firm, and even they rarely worked past 6. By the time my shift started at 10 in the evening, the place was practically a ghost town. My routine was simple. Check the monitors, patrol every 2 hours, log activity, and stay awake until 6 a.m. Easy money, I told myself, until the cameras started showing me things I couldn't explain. The first time it happened, I thought it was a glitch. Camera 14, the one covering the 6th floor hallway, flickered and showed a figure standing by the vending machines. Tall, lean, dressed in black. He didn't move, just stood there like he was waiting for someone. I switched to another angle, then back again, but the figure was gone. When I checked the hallway in person, there was nothing there. No footprints on the dusty tiles, no sign of forced entry. I laughed it off, blaming the cheap equipment. But the following week, it happened again. Same spot, same posture. A man standing by the vending machines. This time, when I switched the feed, the camera didn't just flicker. It went completely black for 5 seconds, then came back showing an empty hall. I told myself not to overthink it. Cameras malfunction all the time, right? Except it wasn't just the cameras. It wasn't just the cameras. The building began answering me back in little ways. The kind that are easy to shrug off if you want to keep your job and your sleep. The elevator on the South Bank would ding on its own at 2:17 a.m. and open onto the 6th floor with no one inside. Motion logs showed trips between floors that didn't match badge swipes. Doors that required keycards would register a reject and then unlock anyway, like they'd recognized an older permission. On Thursday, I brought a thermos and a stubborn mood. If there was a kid messing with me, I'd catch him. If it was a glitch, I'd write it up and make it its problem. At 1:58 a.m., camera 14 jittered again. The frame tore, the static thinned, and there he was. Same posture, same spot. By the vending machines on the 6th floor, shoulder to the wall, head tilted like he was reading a list that wasn't posted. I punched up camera 15, the opposite angle. Empty hall. Back to 14. The figure. Crisp as a portrait. All right, I told the room. We're done being polite. I grabbed the radio, scanned out, and took the freight elevator up. The doors opened onto the 6th floor with that tired sigh only old buildings make. The kind that says, I'm still here, but don't ask me to hurry. The hallway air felt colder than the lobby, even with the heat still running downstairs. Old linoleum amplified my steps. The vending machines hummed to themselves, a soda unit and a snack unit, both company property, both temperamental. Someone had taped a US other slot note over the coin return ages ago. A fluorescent tube inside was half dead and strobing. I stood where the figure had stood on the monitor and looked around. Nothing. Just the hum, a scuff mark, and the smell of burnt dust. Then a can dropped. I didn't press anything. I didn't even touch the front. The soda machine thunked like it had delivered to an invisible hand. The can clattered around the empty chute and stayed inside. The front panel was lit, exact change only. No coins slid back into the tray. Whatever the machine thought it had done, it wasn't for me. I popped the access panel to check the power. The unit's plug was seated, but a strip of electrician's tape across the cord was browned, like it had heated more than once. The snack machine beside it had a dollar bill stuck in the slot, green corner peeking out like a tongue. I tugged gently. The bill came free. It wasn't currency. It was a folded strip of green paper cut to size. On the inside, block letters in faded Sharpie. Stay with me. Back in a minute. There was a date underneath in smaller numbers. The month and day hard to read. The year clear. 2014. A minute. 10 years on. I pocketed the fake bill and did another sweep. The stairwell door at the end of the corridor was propped open by a rubber wedge that didn't belong to us. The sign above said, "Keep closed. Pressure differential." Beyond it, the stairwell rose 10 floors and fell 10 floors, a concrete void that made sound small. My breath fogged in the colder air. I removed the wedge and let the door close. It didn't latch. It rested against the frame like a sleeper with a hand on your shoulder. From my radio, Unit 1, status? Carla's voice, tired but sharp. "6th floor," I said. "Checking a prop. I'm good. Copy. Keep me posted." I set the wedge on the landing and turned back and heard a phone ringing. Old ring. Not the chirp of our VoIP office sets, a brass bell ring from a desk phone they stopped making when people still smoked inside. It came from down the hall, through the dark glass of a suite that hadn't had tenants since before I'd been hired. The etched vinyl still read, E. Marsh Associates. I tried the door. Locked. The phone rang again. And again. 6 times. Then silence. Back at the desk, I pulled the event logs. Cam 14 video loss 0.1703. South car 2 door open 6th FL 02/17/11. Access 6E stairs door ajar 02/18/49. All times that didn't line up with any patrol or cleaning crew. Our night cleaner, Mrs. Alvarez, always left by 11:30. She was more reliable than the sun. I scrolled older logs. 02.17 repeated like a theme. The system flagged it as expected anomaly, an IT joke I didn't appreciate. I clicked Archive Incidents and searched eMarsh. A PDF opened. Notice of Safety Incident, February 17th, 2014. A contract elevator tech named Evan Marsh, no relation to the etched name, the suite had been his once, then empty, had died on site after returning late to retrieve a forgotten bag. He'd called his daughter from the lobby just before 2 a.m., telling her he'd be back in a minute. The elevator had been in maintenance mode. Doors opened on the 6th floor. The car was elsewhere. I took my hand off the mouse and let the weight of the room press into me. The can in the machine, the wedge, the ringing phone in a dead office, the cut green dollar. Stay with me. Back in a minute. I should have gone home that morning and not come back. Instead, I poured another coffee and watched the monitors until the sun bleached the windows into squares of legal paper. That night, the building met me at the door like a dog that didn't like me but accepted we lived together. Camera 14 was fine until 2:16. Then the frame softened. Pixel edges rounded. The bright spots dimmed by a degree that meant nothing until you were counting degrees at 2 a.m. The south elevator dinged once and opened onto the empty 6th floor. I stared at the screen for a long count of 10 and then picked up the radio and said, "I'm going up. I'm not a hero. I'm a man with a rent payment and a habit of finishing what I start." I told myself that as the elevator climbed, as the doors opened, as I stepped out into the cold hallway that knew my shoes. A man stood by the vending machines. He was taller than me, or maybe the flicker made him seem that way. He wore a zip hoodie and the posture of somebody who'd already apologized twice that day. He turned as if he'd heard me, though I made no sound. His face didn't resolve in the stuttering light. It looked like a photograph scanned at too low a DPI. "Sir," I said, because that's what you say to a problem you want to keep human. "Building's closed." He didn't move. And then he did. One step, not toward me, but sideways, until he lined up in the reflection of the machine's glass. In the reflection, his features sharpened, sideburns greyer than the hair above, a crease where worry lives. His mouth shaped words I didn't hear. His breath fogged the glass. Mine didn't. I realized I was holding it. I let out a slow exhale and said, "Can I help you?" His eyes widened as if he'd finally heard me. He lifted his hand and pointed behind me, down the hall toward the stairwell door. 3 small, precise gestures. "Don't take the elevator." I nodded before I knew why. A draft tugged my sleeve. The stairwell door had unlatched itself. From below, the air moved like a sleeping thing adjusting position. "Okay," I said, and my voice sounded different, like a man on a recorded line. "Okay, we'll go the stairs." He didn't follow. He didn't fade. He simply stopped being where he'd been, and camera 14 on the monitor downstairs showed an empty hall while I stood in a full one trying to decide whether I'd imagined the man or the choice. I took the stairs down, counted flights like prayers. On 4, I heard the brass bell phone ring again. On 3, I smelled coffee. On 2, a voice rose through the center shaft. A woman's, not angry, more impatient than afraid. "Dad, you coming?" I stopped so abruptly my knee complained. The sound wasn't in the stairwell. It was in my radio, coming through the open dispatch channel from no one. I pressed the transmit. "Unit 1 to base. You copy that?" Static. Then, "Copy what?" "Never mind," I said, because there is nothing worse at 2:19 a.m. than being the crazy voice on the radio and hearing yourself become a story other guards will tell. When I reached the lobby, the security desk phone was already ringing. The caller ID displayed EXT6614. I checked the extension chart pinned to the divider. 6614 belonged to E. Marsh Associates, vacant. I picked up anyway. The line carried the sound of empty air. Then something like breath, but colder. Then, very soft, a man. "Back in a minute." "Mr. Marsh?" I said, before my mouth could load a better question. Silence. Then the click of old plastic settling. The call log stamped the duration as 000017. I wrote the time in the paper log anyway, because the act of pen on paper felt like I was carving something into wood, and wood remembers water it has held. I told myself I'd had a long week. I told myself tomorrow I would be better rested, better prepared, better at whatever this was. I told myself what men tell themselves when believing is heavier than ignorance. At 2:17 the next night, the elevator dinged again. The camera caught a shape by the machines. The monitors reflected my face. I didn't recognize the expression. It looked like somebody standing in the mirror to practice being brave. I went back up. By the 3rd week, I'd stopped doubting what I was seeing. Doubt was a luxury. Doubt was for people who could clock out at 6, drive home, and let the building sit in its own silence. My silence followed me. It lived in the seams of my jacket, in the corners of my apartment, in the pause before I slept. I started researching. Not ghosts, I wasn't ready to type the word into a search bar, but building deaths, OSHA reports, local archives, old PDF newsletters that had survived in cached browsers. Every time, the same story. Evan Marsh, elevator tech, 2014. Wrong floor, wrong time. Daughter waiting in the car downstairs. He called her, promised he'd be quick. Then nothing until they found him in the shaft. But there were whispers too. Not official reports, not something you'd see in court. Comments on message boards, employee forums. Marsh never left the building. People still hear him on 6. Don't answer if he calls. I printed the comments out, highlighted, read them on my patrols. I told myself it was prep, like studying a manual. What I didn't admit, not then, was that I wanted to believe. Because if it was just faulty wiring and stress, then what had I been talking to? The Friday it escalated, I had backup. Carla, the senior guard, had drawn the short straw and joined me for a shift. She didn't believe a word of my vending machine ghost stories, but she humoured me. "Building this old," she said, "you get creaks, you get drafts. Hell, sometimes you get squatters. What you don't get is Casper." We were watching the monitors at 2:15 when camera 14 flickered. "There," I said, pointing. Carla leaned in. The feed showed the hallway, vending machines, and, yes, a figure. Except this time, it wasn't just a static posture. He moved, slowly, like he was pacing. He walked toward the stairwell door and stopped. Tilted his head. Waited. Carla narrowed her eyes. "That's..." The camera cut to black for 2 seconds, then back. The hall was empty. She sat back. Glitch. I didn't argue. I grabbed my flashlight and badge and said, "I'll prove it." Carla sighed, but she followed. The 6th floor was colder again, breath visible in the beam of my light. The vending machines hummed, the bad tube flickered. But the wedge wasn't in the stairwell door this time. Instead, taped to the glass was a plastic key fob. Security Orange, our brand. A replacement badge, name printed in black letters, Evan Marsh. Carla read it, lips moving like she wanted the letters to behave. That's a sick joke, is what it is. The badge beeped when I touched it to the reader. Access granted. The door unlocked. Air rushed out, the pressure shift real enough to tug Carla's ponytail. I shined the light down the stairwell. Empty concrete. Dust. But the sound didn't match. Somewhere below, a phone rang. Brass bell chime, deep and insistent. Carla put her hand on my arm. "We're not..." The radio crackled. Static, then a voice. "Dad? Hurry. They're waiting." Carla yanked her radio off her belt, stared at it like it had burned her. "That wasn't me," I said, because the words needed saying. She didn't reply. Back in the control room, Carla filed her report without jokes. She typed in stiff sentences and refused to replay camera 14. When she left at dawn, she said, "Don't go up there alone again." I wanted to promise I wouldn't, but promises are heavier when you already know you'll break them. Because when the building calls at 2:17 every night, you answer. And the next night, I did. I took the badge with me. I told myself I wasn't going to use it, that I'd lock it in my locker, maybe even throw it in the river on the way home. But the badge felt warm in my hand, almost like it was pulsing with its own heartbeat. By midnight, I'd convinced myself to carry it, just in case. At 2:17, like clockwork, camera 14 flickered. The figure was back, tall, lean, unmoving. But this time, he wasn't by the vending machines. He was standing directly in front of the stairwell door, his face turned toward the lens. For the first time, I saw detail. Dark eyes, a mustache, a blank expression that wasn't hostile, but wasn't exactly human either, like he was waiting for me to recognize him. I left the control room before the feed cut out. The 6th floor air was freezing, colder than ever before. The vending machine's flicker was slower now, each buzz dragging too long, as though the whole floor had sunk underwater. The stairwell door loomed. The badge in my pocket felt like it was pulling me toward it. I swiped. Access granted. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. I pushed the door open. The stairwell wasn't the stairwell anymore. Concrete was gone, replaced with black walls slick like tar. The air smelled metallic, like rusted iron. Steps spiraled down into a depth that shouldn't exist. The building only had 9 floors, but this stairwell fell forever. I should have run. I should have slammed the door shut and called Carla, the cops, hell, even a priest. But my legs betrayed me. One step, then another. The badge pulsed in my hand. Somewhere below, that old brass phone rang again. "Dad, hurry, they're waiting." The voice wasn't just over the radio this time. It came from below, echoing up the stairwell. Halfway down, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Careful. Someone following, matching my pace, but a second delayed. I froze. The steps froze too. "Evan?" I whispered, because saying his name was easier than saying it. The air shifted. A whisper right against my ear. "You're late." I spun, flashlight trembling, but the beam caught only black tar walls and an empty landing. When I turned back, the badge reader was gone. So was the door I'd entered through. Just more black steps spiraling down. The ringing phone grew louder. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't work right in that stairwell. My watch froze at 2:33. My radio hissed static. My legs ached, but I couldn't stop. The air grew thicker, my lungs burning with every breath. Then I saw it. A door, glowing faintly, like there was a light behind it. Not office light. Too warm, too golden. The brass phone sat on a pedestal beside it, receiver off the hook, swinging gently. I reached for it. When my fingers brushed the receiver, the line clicked alive. A girl's voice, trembling, urgent. "Dad, don't come in." And the door creaked open. The golden light spilled out, too bright for a building's stairwell, too warm for midnight. It looked like sunlight, the kind that slips through your blinds on a slow Sunday morning. For a second, my chest loosened, and I thought maybe all of it, the cameras, the whispers, the badge, had been leading to something good. I stepped closer. The door swung open wider, groaning like old wood, though it wasn't wood at all. Inside was not a room, not an office, not anything that belonged in this city. It was a field. Tall grass rippled in a breeze I couldn't feel. The sky glowed orange and pink, frozen at dusk. And in the middle of that field stood a man. Tall, lean, mustache. The same face I'd seen on camera 14, the same one Carla had denied existed. Evan Marsh. He didn't move at first. He just stood with his hands clasped, head bowed, as if waiting for someone to speak. Then, in the breeze, I heard it. Not words exactly. Not a sound you hear with your ears. A question pressed straight into my head. "Will you take my place?" I staggered back, heart pounding. "What the hell are you talking about?" I shouted. My voice sounded small in that endless field. Marsh finally lifted his head. His eyes locked onto mine. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were tired. "I can't leave unless someone stays," he said. His lips didn't move, but the words crawled into me anyway. "It's been too long. The shift never ends. You opened the door, so now you can choose." Behind him, shapes stirred in the grass. Dozens of figures, their faces blurry, their uniforms unfamiliar. Janitors, guards, maintenance workers. Some wore badges older than mine by decades. All of them stood, waiting, watching. I gripped the brass phone like it was a lifeline. "I didn't sign up for this." "You swiped the badge," he said simply. "You answered the call." The girl's voice cut through the static again. "Dad, don't let him trick you. Don't." For a moment, Marsh flinched. His expression cracked, something human flickering through. Regret, maybe, or grief. I realized then, the voice wasn't warning me. It was warning him. He took a step closer, and the field seemed to tilt with him, as though the whole place bent toward his will. "Someone has to watch," he said. "If not you, then another. But the door is open now. And the door never closes by itself." My legs trembled. The golden light pressed harder, burning my skin though it was warm. The crowd in the grass moved closer, their blurry faces sharpening, eyes hollow but expectant. I could feel it. If I stepped through, the stairwell would vanish. My name would fade from every schedule, every payroll. I'd be gone, folded into the night shift that never ended. If I turned back, I wasn't sure the door would still be there. The brass phone buzzed in my hand. The girl's voice, one last time. "Dad, please, come home." I dropped the receiver, and I ran. The stairwell reappeared after the first landing. Concrete, dust, fluorescent hum. My badge was cold again, lifeless plastic. I shoved the door open and collapsed onto the 6th floor carpet. When I looked back, the stairwell door was just a door again. No glow, no field, no phone. But the wedge was back under the frame. And on the door's glass window, written in foggy letters like from a breath, was one word: soon. I should have quit that night. I should have handed in my keys, dumped the badge on Carla's desk, and walked out the front doors without looking back. But I didn't. I told myself I needed the paycheck. Told myself it was just exhaustion, paranoia, maybe even food poisoning from the vending machine burritos. Anything but what it really was. So when the next shift came, I showed up, and the building was waiting. From the start, things were wrong. The lobby lights buzzed, brighter than usual, almost blinding. The security monitors in the control room showed empty halls, but every camera had a faint shimmer, like heat waves bending air on asphalt. Carla wasn't there. Her desk was clean, phone silent. I checked the logbook. My name was the only one signed in. But below it, faintly etched, like with a dull blade, was another. Marsh. I tried to laugh it off. A prank. Some other guard messing with me. But then the radio crackled. Evan? It was her again. The girl's voice. Softer this time, almost like she'd been crying. You shouldn't have come back. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. Who are you? I whispered. Silence. Then, they don't let you leave once you've opened the door. The line went dead. 2:17 a.m. The moment everything always shifted. Camera 14 lit up. This time, it didn't show the vending machines. It showed me. Sitting in the control room, staring at the monitors. I leaned closer. On the screen, my own head tilted, as if the me in the camera had just noticed the me outside it. And then that version of me smiled. I slammed the monitor off, heart pounding. The badge in my pocket felt hot again. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Too heavy to be mine, too slow to be casual. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door, sweeping the beam across the empty corridor. The light hit something on the wall. A schedule. One I'd never seen before. The paper looked yellowed, the ink faded, but the names were clear. Guards, maintenance, staff. All listed under permanent shift. At the bottom, scribbled in fresh ink, Evan Cole. Start date, tonight. No end date. The badge pulsed, once, twice. And from the stairwell at the end of the hall came the ringing of that brass phone. Only this time, the door was already open. The golden light spilled into the corridor, stretching shadows across the carpet. And in the glow, I saw them. Marsh, the janitor, the blurry faces from the field. All waiting. All watching. The girl's voice whispered one last time, carried on the hum of the phone. Dad. If you walk through, you'll never walk back out. My feet edged closer anyway. The wedge had been pulled from the door. The stairwell yawned wide. The night shift wasn't over. It never would be. Thanks for listening. That's how my last night on the job ended, with a door that never closes and a shift that never ends. Have you ever worked somewhere that felt wrong, like the walls were watching you? Share your story in the comments. Someone else might need to hear it. And if this story gave you chills, don't forget to like and subscribe. More real stories, raw, eerie, and unforgettable, are coming soon.